started.
Thank you for joining us this evening for the September 21st, I'm sorry, for the October 5th, 2021 Monte Sereno City Council regular meeting. Before this meeting is called to order, I would like to point out a few house rules to assist council members, staff, and members of the public to successfully participate in this meeting. Council members, your microphone is live, so please keep your microphones on mute until you wish to speak. For tonight's meeting, we are using Zoom to host the council meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, chat and raise hand. Please use chat only to report technical issues such as being unable to hear a council member speaking. Please use raise hand to be recognized by the mayor and enabled to speak to the council. To comment under oral communication or on any agenda item, you are allowed 3 minutes to speak per agenda item. Emails limited to 350 words can also be submitted to the city clerk and it will be read into the record. This word limit is set to adhere to the typical 3-minute time allowance. Only attendees using the Zoom application can use the raise hand option to comment. Participants calling in from a telephone will only be able to listen and cannot provide feedback or public comment. Lastly, because we are not all in the same room, all votes at this meeting will be taken by roll call.
Thank you. Okay, I hereby call the meeting for Tuesday, October 5th, 2021 of the City of Monte Sereno City Council to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mekachek.
Present.
Councilmember Turner. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Present.
Mayor Luthold.
Present.
And Councilmember Lawler is absent. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Ms. Radcliffe or Mr. Leonardis, any changes to the orders of the day?
No changes for me.
All right, seeing none and having received nothing, let's go ahead and move to our presentation. We have the Santa Clara Fire Department here to present today. Mr. Leonardis, did you want to introduce?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We should have Chief Kurt Ku on the line with us this evening to present our annual fire update. As we all know, it is fire season, and it is also the worst drought since 76, 77. So we are delighted to hear what the Chief has to tell us this evening. Chief, are you with us?
I am. Good morning. Good morning. Oh man, what kind of day I'm having. Good evening, Mayor Luthold and council members. My name is Suwana Kurtgal. I am the current acting assistant chief for Santa Clara County Fire Department. This meeting would normally be facilitated by our Deputy Chief of Training, Mark Shoemate, who is the liaison for Monte Sereno. Mark is going off on a very well-deserved Hawaiian vacation with his wife, who just retired from her service as a public employee. So I hope that I do this justice for you all in terms of just making sure I don't mess up some names or whatnot as we move forward. So as indicated, this is going to be an annual report for us. I know that I spoke to Chief John Justice. I used to work for him when we put together some talking points for Monte Sereno back, I think a couple of years ago. There might have been a little bit of a hiatus with 2020. My regular duties for the department are the Deputy Chief of Administration and Planning. You know, let me go back just one step. I do want to update the group on Chief Bowden. Chief Tony Bowden, as some of you may or may not recall, went out on what was supposed to be a very short medical leave. I think it was in March of this year, and there's some complications. He's still out on medical leave. The good news is that we are remaining optimistically or cautiously optimistic that he will be able to come back to the office, hopefully before the end of the year, and resume his duties as fire chief. But that's why we have the acting fire chief, now currently the the assistant fire chief, who is the acting fire chief, Brian Glass, in his role. And then for me, I am a deputy chief of administration planning, acting as the assistant chief. So my normal role as the administration and planning deputy chief really has to do with data and how we perform specifically with regard to our accreditation. So what we did this year specifically, let me share my screen, is, can I share my screen? It says it'll stop the screen sharing of the agenda. Are we okay with that?
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, great. Here, let me share okay. So our website, if you may, so, this is our website, and under our website, you have about SCCFD, and under that you have key reports and documents. And in the key reports and documents, this year, for the first time this accreditation cycle, we actually put our community risk assessment standards of cover. So some of this is lots of reading, that stuff that you already know in terms of our maybe a response model, information regarding who we serve, how those cities are organized. But this year, our 2020 annual report is very different than our previous years. This year's annual report here really kind of highlights some overall, all of the divisions within the agency. We do have a message here that's new for from the fire chief. That's about a minute and 42 seconds. Again, I invite you all to take a look at this website to get some information that's much more granular about the organization than in previous annual reports. I say all this, you can kind of highlight different areas to jump around in the website, but here under operations division, some of the things that we did, again, that's a little different than last year, is highlighted what 2020, specifically COVID, did to the organization for number of calls. So if you look here, hold on here, let me get up here, make sure that I'm looking at the right numbers. You still have the incident type and how that breaks out, and that's by the entire aggregate of all of our response service areas. Maybe that's not super useful, but here we do break it down by station. So again, Montessorinos is primarily serviced by Quito Station. You can see here it's one of the lowest call volume numbers. Now again, that you still get calls in the city, but it's not as much as, say, Campbell Station or Cupertino Station. We do break it down again by unique incidents, city, town, jurisdictions. Again, Montesereno here, one of the lowest call volume generators for the agency. And what I have here, I think it's all the way actually back up here in terms of, there's some data that we presented. Some of the things that I thought was neat about this format is that you can actually go in here, and for example, this is Quito Station. You can click on that and you can see Quito Station, excuse me here. You can actually scroll up and actually see the boundary of the Quito Station. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. This again is a different product. It's called Storymap. It's a little different than what we've done in years past. And so I just wanted to highlight that for you all. There was some information, I think it was actually, I'm sorry, it's an EMS here. Lightning complex, as we all are very well aware of from last year, we wanted to put the footprint in a GIS format on our website so people could see the depth and breadth of really what kind of acreage we were talking at. So here you have what was the most threatening to our organization or our response service area, which is the CZU Lightning Complex. That's its footprint. Again, this allows you to kind of zoom in, take a look at it, scroll over, see how close it was actually to the county boundary. And then over here on the east side of the county was the SCCU Lightning Complex, much larger. We sent resources to both of these incidents for extended periods at a time. The agency really stepped up during COVID to support these local, these incidents that were happening locally. So for EMS, overall, what we saw was call volume went down 13%. That's throughout the entire response service area. But here in Montesereno, again, 50% down. Really, there was only 2 MVA multi-vehicle accidents in 2019, only 1 in 2020. But we saw here's just some information that does break it down by city. So if you do want to go take a look at some of the stats that's in this annual report, you can find it on our website. So I'm going to switch this to one of our, see if I can share this, excuse me, while I try to navigate through here. So I had sent this information ahead of time. This is Montesereno's data for the entirety of 2020. And then we have one that's year to date. So again, just in general, call volume by month usually, is anywhere between, looks like 15, with a peak here of 28, 26, 31. That's sort of independent of certain things. But what we're looking at here is that for Montessorinos, there really wasn't a big change in call volume during the pandemic. And that's because a lot of people stayed home. And so what we saw in cities like Cupertino was a dramatic drop in call volume because a lot of people were not going to Apple or in Los Gatos because people weren't going to Netflix or some of the businesses that draw a lot of traffic. So here again, this is your annual report. This again was sent to you. EMS still breaks out about 50% of your calls, service calls, and these could have started as an EMS call. They get there on scene and somebody says, oh, I'm not hurt, I just need to get back into bed, or some sort of call in which it might have seemed like it was an alarm call, but it turned out that, hey, we just need to replace something, a smoke detector or something in the house. Fire alarms are actual fire alarms. Hazardous conditions usually is like carbon monoxide, or maybe it's a hazmat call, leaking car, fuel on the road or something like that. And then actually 2% were fires. So the dollar loss is good for 2020. I was going to go back and look at what this dollar loss was. If I remember correctly, it might have been just something off to the side of the road, meaning something that was incidental, but it was only $2,000. We did, for us as an agency, we shifted many of our community education programs to being virtual, just like this meeting is. So we wanted to continue to engage the community, make sure that we were there to deliver some sort of community risk reduction knowledge, whether that was some of their babysitter information. And this is broken out by 15 different programs with 198 attendees. One of the things that I will say, it's hard to divvy up between Montesereno and Los Gatos. So this information actually encompasses both the town of Los Gatos and the city of Montesereno. But again, you can see response times here. Again, it just breaks it down. Again, engine 78 is your primary engine that responds to the city of Los Gatos. Their average code 3 response time is 4 minutes and 38 seconds. There's an urban density and a rural density for Montesereno. We've got truck 85 in the urban area because of just where it's placed, 3 minutes and 55 seconds. Engine 83, rescue 83. These are your second or your third and fourth due units, 414 and 453. And again, these are first due arriving units. So some of these lines that you see here, this indicates, for example, that there was, looks like 3 calls here at midnight. This is, again, aggregate for the entire year, which generated 3 units responding, versus this number here that looks like at the 11 o'clock hour, you have 15 calls approximately throughout the course of the year that actually generated a little over, again, these are approximate estimations so that one can take a look at it and go, oh, it actually generated 20, maybe 27 units. And that's because we dispatch by risk. So for a EMS call, it's just your sort of, I don't want to say run of the mill, but a call in which somebody's sick, we dispatch 1 unit. But for a car fire, we dispatch more than 1 unit potentially. Or if it's a structure fire, we'll dispatch the full 22 people. So this just shows that over the course of a 24-hour period, there are times where it's usually 1 for 1, 1 call, 1 unit responds, but there are times in which that there are multiple calls and more than 1 unit responds to those calls. And it shows the regionalization, and again, just making sure that we send the appropriate response to mitigate the threat that is present. So your grand total for 2022 is 4 minutes and 20 seconds average in the urban density and 4:49 in the rural. We'll just go very quickly to year to date 2021. So this is as of last month. August. We're still processing September's data. So this is up through August 2021. Not a whole lot of difference. Again, attendees, really it's hard to bifurcate. Well, was that in 2020 or was that in 2021? What we're doing as an organization now is we have a new deputy chief of fire prevention who comes to us from San Jose, and he also oversaw their community education program there, because that was also under the fire prevention division. And we are spooling back up slowly, but spooling back up CPR classes, additional community education classes, and hopefully when the order or the signal that we can start having them in person, maybe it won't happen until 2022, but when all that happens, we'll be ready to go on the fire prevention side of the house. So again, this information was sent. If you have any questions, or sent earlier than this meeting, if anybody has any questions regarding any of this information here, I'm happy to answer it. The last piece before I turn it over is just our support services update. I wanted to throw this up here. We are fully in the Redwood Station rebuild. So if you're up on Highway 17 and you take the Redwood Estates exit and you go to where that station was, well, that station no longer exists. We're replacing it. Our new district headquarters is being I guess going through the permit process. It's in the city of Campbell. It's about, I would say, a little less than a mile, half a mile from our current location. We're looking to move into that location somewhere in Q3, Q4, 2022. Keto Station rebuild. This is the one that really affects Monte Sereno. There was some issues with an easement and PG&E, but PG&E coordinated the power pole replacements to raise the lines, making way for the new 2-story fire station for Monte Sereno. The district plans to advertise this project in 2020 at 2, as you see, following substantial completion of the Redwood Station. So we don't want to have both stations fully engaged at the same time. We've got Redwood fully going and still on time and on track and on target. And then we will start moving through the process to get the Keto Station rebuilt. Los Gatos Fire Station needed a kitchen and day room remodel, which has been complete. So again, these are all facility infrastructures that we've been working on for the entirety of our district. Or response service area. Winchester Station replacement, again, that's sort of next down the line, but that's going to be much further down. I talk about it, but we want to replace the ladder, but we really need to replace the station. So we'll see which one comes first. And then we've got some rescue equipment, some engines, breathing support, hazmat, that's going to be replaced. So with that said, that is really what we have for the update. And again, there's so much information in that 2020 annual report. Some of it is, again, not necessarily things that are that necessarily may seem to apply to Monte Sereno, but there's several videos in there that I invite you to go ahead and watch. One of them, which is a 9-minute overview video, just kind of shows what we do, and especially with regard to mutual aid and all of these wildfires like the Caldor, like the Dixie. We continue to support the mutual aid system throughout the state and send, even through COVID, and I say this because staffing has been hard as we work through some of the quarantine requirements, but we still at times we're supporting those incidents with up to 22, 25 people at a time. And that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you very much. Council member questions, Ms. Turner.
Thank you so much. I really like your new website, by the way. It's very it's very pretty, and you have a lot of detail. My question for tonight really is, do you have any helicopters that you can dispatch for fires, for structures, or for big fires, major fires that occur?
So we have right next to us, Cal Fire Station, that's at the Alma Station, 1663, I believe, is their unit ID. And they have a helicopter there. They've had it there since I was a firefighter. I've been on fires, brush fires, in which the helicopter has dropped water and all of a sudden everything's on fire and then everything's smoldering. So then our job is to go in and move the vegetation so that the smoldering stuff stops smoldering and becomes cold, right? So there's a concerted, coordinated effort between our CAL FIRE partners who have the helicopter, and that's Copter 106 that was available throughout the entire duration of this summer locally. They don't generally move those helicopters. They need to stay within the Santa Clara unit. So the helicopter could go over and put out or be part of the suppression efforts, say in Gilroy, or it could be over there in Livermore, but it is local and travel time is pretty short. There is also air tankers that are available to us. There's 2 of them that fly out of Gilroy. And so again, if we had something in which the battalion chief recognized was a major threat, we would keep, especially there's along that Highway 9 corridor going south is the mutual threat zone. So our job is to keep it out of the structures, and CAL FIRE comes in to keep it out of the watershed. So again, a concerted effort with coordinated air and ground attack to help mitigate any vegetation fires. You did, council member, mention structure fires. I know Chief Bob Smith, who was my battalion chief when I first got promoted to captain. I said, hey, can I use Copter 106 for a structure fire? He goes, hey, if you need to, call them and they can come. So we don't typically do that. Usually it would have to be a threat to a wildland urban interface, but it's not off the books.
I have another quick question. You mentioned that you hired somebody from San Jose to actually have new classes. Do you have a schedule of the classes, the cert classes, or other classes, new classes that you have on your website?
I believe they're working on that right now. What I will do is have our community risk reduction director, community education director, I should say, Christy Moore, send that to me and I'll forward it to you. Would that work? They do have a schedule of classes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So it's specifically CERT that you're interested, council member?
Oh, your new classes. I've been to your cert classes, so I'm interested in all the new classes that you're.
Okay, all the new classes. On the website, there are upcoming events. Let me go back and look real quick. So if you go to the website, the homepage, let me make sure it's there before I tell you it is. I know you can't see my my screen, but it says, as soon as you land on the homepage, it says upcoming events. It's kind of in a bar just underneath Learn the Sounds of Fire Safety. And so what they've got is online in Saratoga on October 6th, preparing for medical emergencies. That's for Saratoga. Then they've got one in Chinese coming up. Again, you can, because we started doing multilingual language classes on October 7th. And then we have a virtual tour. You've got an in-person class. So if you go to the website and click on upcoming events, it will show you the next upcoming events for our community education.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Mekachuk.
Hi. There was a fire recently just off Dave's Ave, and some of our residents, it was like right in their back, across from their backyard. And I wanted to compliment the fire department on addressing that fire quickly and ensuring that everyone was safe and that property damage was minimized. And also, we had the deputy chief provide some information on one of our ordinances, so that was most helpful during the year. So I just wanted to recognize the fire department for those items that I'm aware of directly. Thank you.
I will pass that along for sure.
Great, thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, you've got your hand up. Looks like we've lost your video, but Are you there? Mr. Lahi's had some technical difficulties. Let's give him a second to come back. While we're waiting for him to get his technical difficulties, I just want to.
Thank you. I'm here. I
There
can
you
hear
are.
you loud and clear. Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you so much for your report and your presentation, and the material you've given us is tremendous. I just had a couple of questions. There's a big push in the legislature which wants Monte Sereno to build a couple hundred units in the next 5 years or so. Well, not quite the next 5 years, but starting fairly soon. And also there's other legislation that has passed that allows homeowners to, not homeowners, developers to basically come in and convert every house into 4 houses if necessary. And obviously the concern we have is fire. I mean, we are in an area where there are trees and hills, and I'm wondering if you guys have really looked at the impact that may have on the resources you would need, and whether we can assist you. And also, just generally speaking, as far as the fire map for Monte Sereno is concerned, whether that needs to be updated given the drought conditions and the fact that we really don't have very good evacuation routes, because that may make a difference as to where homes should be built or not built, and how many homes could be built. If you could address that, please.
Yes. So you're absolutely spot on with regard to the accessory dwelling units. State is trying to encourage more housing, more affordable housing, and we have a fire prevention division that is extremely busy with plans reviews for those accessory dwelling units, those ADUs. So with regard to, the actual plan review and whether or not a sprinkler system is required or not required in those units, I can't speak to it because that does go through fire prevention and they evaluate it based on the building codes. I can't speak to specifically Montessorinos, but what I can say is from, again, my vantage point as the administration and planning deputy chief, we did an analysis through our standards of cover, and we looked at 5 years of data and said, hey, where do we need some more units and what would that look like? And what we fell on, and it's in the standards of cover, is a peak staffing model. And what that would do is, number one, it would help mitigate some, even some fires. So even if you have structure fire, vegetation fire, just putting more units available where they are actually roaming, that was something we were going to explore, or we are still going to explore once the pandemic conditions allow. What I mean by that is we got severely hampered as an agency because of the COVID-19 restrictions. So normally we would put maybe 14 to 16 people in an academy. We could only put in 6 because of the distance that they all needed to be from each other to get through the fire academy for both of the academies that occurred in 2020. So we're a little behind the curve. The good news, though, is in my division, in the administration and planning division, a battalion chief reports directly to me. He is the pre-fire management and wildfire resilience officer. And what that means is he has been tasked to build a program to look at all of our jurisdictions, inclusive of Monte Sereno, Los Gatos, and look at egress. Where can we do shaded fuel breaks? What does that look like? We've already purchased a chipper, and now we're looking at building up the actual workforce. And what I mean by that is a fuels crew or a field crew in which they would do the chipper work, where we would identify places, egresses, where we're like, this vegetation has to be cut back for whatever reason, whether it's egress reasons or the fact that we need a fuel break. So that position was filled in March of this year. He is, again, this is Battalion Chief Mike Matheson. He brings with him 27 years of experience working for CAL FIRE at that Alma station, that one station that we talked about a helicopter being. He was the battalion chief out of that station. And so we really, we put out that job notice, and we were very lucky that he applied, and he was hands down the best candidate to build out this program. So we are fully underway in building that program, and we'll make sure that through grants or through the work that he has done with the Fire Safe Council in the past, we identify a plan and communicate that out to the cities.
Thank you for that response, and that kind of answers one of the questions I asked you about the ADU issues. But I wanted to be a little bit broader, because you've got trees and forests that are all over the place, and some of them may be in Monte Sereno, some of them may be in Los Gatos or Saratoga, but I don't think the fire would stop at the border. Is there, and some of these fires, I mean, if you analyze data from 5 years ago, that may not reflect what the data is going to be for the 5 years that are coming in. It's like, we should be fighting the last war. We need to prepare for the next one. And it sounds like you guys are trying to staff up as quickly as you can and do what you can. But that's what we're concerned about, big fire that comes in. The other question I had is, a lot of stuff that you do, it has to do with EMS. And I suspect that's because as the population ages, you may get more of those calls. Do you have separate planning for expanding those resources for the EMS services?
So again, that peak staffing model was what we recommended to Chief Bowden, was a squad type unit in which it would be staffed with 2 roaming through the jurisdictions. We're looking at maybe starting with 1, but ideally having 1 per battalion, so 3 working every day. And that unit would be able to answer both EMS calls or fire calls. They would be fully functional the way our current deployment model is, that you could show up on a call that's somebody in a car accident, and then the very next call is actually a brush fire along Highway 9, and be able to start mitigating that with enough water to just at least get a perimeter started. So the EMS piece, yes, you're absolutely right. Any aging population, and in our standards of cover, it did indicate through the demographics. We looked at the census data, and there are certain areas in our jurisdiction in which we have an aging population. But with that said, part of what we try to do is that community education piece. And what I mean by that is, some of the programs we have is Farewell to Falls, trying to mitigate some of the things that actually tend to be preventable for senior residents, like falls that end up tripping, like rugs in their house that end up tripping them. So we don't anticipate that EMS calls are going to go down. And you are, again, to your point, we recognize fully that the conditions of fires today, looking at even 2017 data, is archaic. What we see, even with the Dixie Fire and the Caldor Fire that was there in South Lake Tahoe, or threatening South Lake Tahoe, is timber that is going up in smoke. Because normally for vegetation fires, it burns the ground fuels first. So what you do through the mitigation process is try to remove as much ground fuels as possible. But just the timber's dry. The vegetation's dry. So the larger campaign is working with the governor's office. And again, this is just about the grants that the governor gives out to help the state, throughout the state, to try to mitigate some of these things. And you may have seen that last year with the shaded fuel break on Highway 17, really trying to make some sort of headway. If a fire comes this way, we'll widen the vegetation or thin out the vegetation along that Highway 17 corridor. So there's multiple projects going on. I know the Los Altos Hills is also working on some stuff that we're going to try to tie into the work that Chief Matheson is doing. But it is a long road ahead, but we have our eye on the prize of making it so that we reduce the risk as best possible for the jurisdictions that we serve.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Great. Thank you for the questions as well. I have a couple of questions to follow on. One, it sounds like with the chipper, with the strike teams, that the fire department is becoming more proactive in terms of driving around and observing problems and then reporting those to homeowners so they can do something about that, or reporting that to city officials so that they can take care of it. Is that a true statement that we're actually going to be seeing much more proactivity that way?
Yes, the weed abatement program that we have under the previous Deputy Chief of Fire Prevention, Julie Lenny, was a good effort in trying to have the crews go out there, drive their area, identify parcels and lots in which, you know, you had lots of dead vegetation on the rooftop on a wood shake roof, for example, right? Those kind of things in terms of educating even the homeowner, hey, we want you to have 50 feet or 30 feet or maybe 100 feet, because again, it really depends on the fire severity zone that they live in, to try to create this buffer between the vegetation and the home. Not always feasible, but again, what falls in the pre-fire management and wildfire resilience program that's under the Administration and Planning Division is this piece in which we are working to take GIS data and go out and actually look at parcels and identify them and work with the homeowners to say, hey, this is actually potentially a pretty big problem, whether it's their type of vegetation, meaning their type of decorative shrubs and trees that they use to adorn their property, and then educating them on what replacements they could use instead. Chief Matheson, like I said, is very versed on that. He, and I think somebody was out there from Monte Sereno. I don't want to misspeak. Evan Lowe's office, I think it was 2 Saturdays ago, had at the downtown Los Gatos Artes and Wine Festival, there was a grant that Evan Lowe worked on to fund some of these, again, proactive programs for the West Valley cities. And so we've got some that went to Cupertino, some that went to Los Gatos. I'm not sure how much went to specifically Monte Sereno or if that was rolled up in Los Gatos's, but that was $2 million worth. And we're planning on using some of those funds, like I said, to look at a wildfire specialist that helps support the battalion chief who currently runs that program. So we are looking to shore up and add more depth of experience and personnel to help in these mitigation efforts.
Great. Yeah, I think ours was rolled in with Los Gatos and the larger area. The other question relating to that, are you taking a proactive approach to holding PG&E's feet to the fire, so to speak, when people are seeing any issues with PG&E equipment or PG&E lines when your people are out? Do you have that's a formal procedure?
I don't know that we have the ability to hold their feet to the fire, but what we do have is a very active fire investigation unit under fire prevention. And what I mean by that is when there is any fire, the fire investigation unit, which comprises of 3 full-time regular duty folks, and then a multitude of on-call that supports that, as well as the contract that we have with Campbell Police for the actual arson unit. And what I mean by that is if there's something suspect, then Campbell, we actually have sworn police officers who would then do the investigation, and then they would go and make the arrest. So all of this in terms of the body of resources that would investigate the fire, and then it would come out and we do a report to the fire chief quarterly about these are the fires that occurred, here were their source causes. Now, a lot of the PG&E stuff that goes on in terms of holding their feet to the fire, I think that's at a higher political level. If I were to venture to guess, we simply work with the Office of Emergency Management to ensure that when there is a PSPS, a planned power outage, that we inform the residents affected in our area. And in 2020, there were quite a few. Again, we had the lightning complexes that were happening, but we worked through the notification process to be proactive in the community that, hey, a power outage is coming. Have you told the cities? Yeah, we've told the cities. Well, we've upstaffed, and that's what we do. We upstaff on those days as well.
Yeah, I guess my question was more on the proactive pre-fire side of things, making sure that PG&E is doing what they're supposed to do. We do have that Highway 9 corridor, and it's been a frustration on and off for pretty much all time between the combination of what is the city's jurisdiction, what is Caltrans jurisdiction, what may be PG&E issues. What do we do about the eucalyptus trees along the highway there, and getting people to take responsibility? So I guess I'm wondering about the fire department really taking the responsibility when you see a problem, doing something about it, and whether that's Caltrans or PG&E on the pre-fire side of things. The weed abatement program, it's great. We can drive around, we can say this is the homeowner with the problem, and you can put them on the watch list and we can follow up on that. But when the problem is Caltrans or the problem is PG&E, that's beyond what we can do. And we've hit that wall before. So I'm wondering if that's something that you or the wildfire response and the pre-fire really taking an active role in and have the resources to push on that now.
Yeah, I don't think we have the muscle yet. I do anticipate that we will be able to, through that program, write reports that will become public. That's the intent, right? To identify, to mitigate, and then to report out so that we show progress and show the good work in doing the fuels mitigation. So, you know, I fully understand the challenge with even Caltrans. And I say that because even the Highway 17 corridor back in the day was dangerous for our folks to work on. And it was challenging, very challenging to get them to be proactive about removing some of the things that would have been, if you will, you know, a missile if a car hit it and our crews are working on the side. So I don't have a great answer for you, Mayor. I do know that it is something that we are all encompassing in terms of this program that we have. And like I said, we are very excited. This program really stemmed from Chief Bowden being asked by one of the Board of Supervisors for a board referral, a report specifically regarding the fire threat or the risk for the county. And in that board referral, we had mentioned specifically a pre-fire management plan. And so the county took a look at it, and we decided we couldn't wait for the county. And so that's why we have it. It's not because we were given the direction from the county. We said we need to do it for our cities. So if that's any consolation, we are keeping our eye on the prize. It's a risk that our firefighters are saying as well. You know, we want to keep them safe, and they recognize the risk. So it is not just for the community residents, but for the folks who are on the front line as well, that we identify these things and figure out how we can communicate them and get them mitigated.
And I think that's great. I think that's exactly the progress that we were wishing to see, and it's great that you all have taken the reins and are making that happen. One other area, before I get back to Mayor Pro Tem's follow-up question, is the insurance companies. This year, we've had two issues with insurance companies. Well, one issue and one opportunity, really, that I'm aware of. One, a lot of our residents in the high fire danger zones are reporting that they're being dropped by their insurance coverage. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts and comments on that. And then the second is, I've noticed my own insurance company reached out and said they will be more than happy to come. In fact, they said, unless you check the box, they will be coming to inspect properties, to offer suggestions for abating fire risk on individual properties, and potentially even sending out their own crews in the event of an emergency to help save properties they insure. So are you looking into that kind of partnership and how to use those resources on the one hand, and then how to deal with the insurance company simply dropping people on the other hand?
So the dropping of insurance, homeowners insurance from insurance companies has been ongoing, I think, since you know, the late 2018s, 2017s, the Tubbs fire, the Paradise fire, all of these fires really move the insurance company to try to, I guess, minimize their loss at the homeowner's expense. I say all this because we engaged with community wildfire preparedness webinars or seminars, if you will. They were all virtual, and we invited the insurance company, the insurance commissioner, I want to say it was Javier, I can't remember his last name. I don't know if he attended, but certainly the communication through our community risk reduction group was to him. And we had an insurance commissioner representative on those webinars. Again, we can't force them to, we can't influence them, but we wanted them to be available to the homeowners so that they could answer the questions that we don't have really any way to influence. But with that said, I know, like I said, I'll go back to Chief Bowden. He was very astute to it. He kept talking to other fire chiefs about it, trying to work within the powers that they have as a collective group to work on, hey, we've got residents in our jurisdictions that are losing their insurance. This is not right. So that recognition was robust through our A-staff meetings in terms of that discussion points, but we didn't really know, even within ourselves, like what jurisdictional or what power do we have for these, to work with these insurance companies. So I don't have a good answer for that, other than the fact that we invited them to be part of some of these seminars that occurred. Now, I think the last one was in September, early September, but we usually try to have them, or at least thus far, we've had them in this, in the like April month range, and then again toward I think it was like August month range. So going back to Councilmember Turner's question about what are the upcoming classes, I can go back and look and see if there are any plans for additional webinars or seminars. Your second question, Mayor, was about, sorry, what was it?
It's really about the insurance companies, on the other hand, seem to be reaching out and saying they're actually going to help with wildfire prevention and potentially even stepping in the event of fires.
Yeah.
To save properties. And so that seems like another area of opportunity. I'm wondering if that's something that you're specifically exploring with the kind of the private side of things there.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a place where maybe later on down the road, we could try to fold in that component. It's not on the radar right now. There's so many other things that we're trying to do, in terms of just getting the crews in place, housing them where, and again, this is a big project. Where do we house them? What do we give them? How do we compensate them? Are they full-time employees? This is the big question for us right now as we build out these crews. But I did, and I don't want to misspeak here, but I know that the insurance piece was a big push from a lot of communities that I think, I don't want to say the governor's office, but there was some influence of like, you can't just strip away homeowners insurance from folks. But I really don't have enough information to speak on that any further.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Like I say, my own experience, the insurance company sending the, you have to opt out, otherwise we are going to take a proactive role in protecting your property and making sure that it is in its best form. So at least some of the insurance companies are really stepping up and being helpful, it seems.
I'm going to pass that on to Chief Matheson and see if he knows anything about it. And again, if he's able to educate me a little bit more about some information that he has, I'll certainly pass that along.
Yeah, and certainly anything there where you can reach out to them. They're getting paid for this after all. You guys are doing a lot of good work, and I know seeking the grants and all of that. So really appreciate the way your department particularly has stepped up and is doing better and better year over year. It's wonderful to see. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Questions, comments? It's like you did a great job and took care of everyone. So thank you so much for coming this evening. And we'll let you go and get some rest, and then get back to work for us.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, moving now to the oral communications section of the calendar. This is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters which are not on the agenda to raise your hand to be recognized to speak. If we have any members of the public wishing to speak on such matters, please raise your hand and I will recognize you. Seeing none, we will close oral communications. Move now to written communications. Ms. Radcliffe, have we received any written communications that have not made their way into the agenda yet?
No, we haven't.
All right, thank you very much. Moving to the consent calendar, I believe we had a request to pull item 1 to approve the minutes from August 17th from the calendar. Is that correct, Ms. Radcliffe?
I wanted to pull or just have the September 21st minutes be pulled. They're not quite ready or not quite accurate, and move that to the October 19th meeting.
All right, so it's just pulling the September 21st meeting minutes from the consent calendar. Do any council members wish to object to that? Otherwise, I will go ahead and pull the September 21st meeting minutes, and they will come to us next time around. Seeing no objection, let's go ahead and pull that. Moving down the rest of the consent calendar, we'll go through this first with any minor questions that council members have. Of course, any requests to pull items, then open for public comment, and then we will entertain a consent calendar motion. So let's see, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, I see your hand up first.
Thank you. Yeah, just a minor thing on the minutes. It would be helpful if when taking down the minutes, if the people who are part of an action item that has been taken are named. So for example, for the Youth Commission, August 3rd, 2021 meeting, there were members that were appointed to the Youth Commission. I would appreciate if you could put their names in the minutes also. It'll be 1 extra line or 2 extra lines.
I could add that.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I think there were some appointed on that meeting, and there were some appointed prior to that. And I had requested it at that time also to be done. So I would really appreciate it. I know there's a lot there. Also on this same meeting, there was a ad hoc committee week. They were selected. It would be good to put down the names of the council members who were appointed to each committee. So it's all in one place.
Okay, I'll make that change.
Great, thank you so much.
Councilmember Mekachuk.
I have one question on the warrant list, and perhaps Mr. Samaranos can respond to it. Is it appropriate at this point in time?
Yeah, let's go ahead, ask your question, and we'll see if Mr. Samaranos is able to answer it for you.
Okay, on the very last part of the warrant list, there's an $8,000 charge for a soil report. And is that a pass-through expense where we're paying the money, but we're going to charge the exact same amount to the applicant, or is that a City of Montessorinos expense?
I believe I'm told that's a City of Montessorinos expense. City Manager Steve? Yeah, I was told that that was a city expense. Apparently on this particular item, there was a retainer wall that.
Okay, I believe I recall the situation. That one's been an issue.
Oh, I don't think they can hear you because I'm.
Yeah, Mr. Leonardis, we're not getting your audio. You sounded very quiet in the background.
Okay, so this is Steve. I'm on Reynolds headset. My phone came undone. Engineer Khan hired a soils engineering company. We have a retaining wall over on Withy Road, and basically it's failing. It's 2 or 3 sandbags high. It's kind of a temporary thing that was put up a while ago. We had a mudslide out there last year. We had a shovel. We went back in time and looked at the history of the retaining wall, it appears that there was some old soils reports done, disputes between the owner of the property above and the city of Monte Sereno, who should be maintaining and supporting this this hillside from sliding onto our road. So the first step in the process moving forward was to hire the soils engineer. Engineer Khan hired the soils engineer to determine how we can put together a suitable structure at a very affordable cost to solve this longstanding problem on Withy Road. That's what that $8,000 was for.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if I could follow up on that, I mean, I went to that California League of Cities convention, and one of the biggest cases that came down was a retention wall that was put on a hill. I forget what city it was, but the landslide came and it basically destroyed half the city, and the city was sued for that. What needs to be done is, if you're going to be putting up to avoid liability, because I don't know how serious this is, some of the steps, and Attorney Rudin can probably help us out with that as to what the kind of report we need from the expert and what findings we need to make sure that we're doing our job and have done our due diligence and we have immunity if something, hopefully we'll do it well so nothing drastic happens. But we do want to comply with all the requirements and dot all the I's and cross all the T's and do a great job at building the wall. But there may be some reports we need to back it up. Attorney Rudin, are you available?
Yes. I'm not sure whether or not we're veering off into the topic of discussing an unagendized material. I think in terms of having an in-depth discussion on this, we should probably put it on our future agenda item.
Yeah, I don't think we need a discussion on it. I just need, hopefully the city manager can look for guidance from you directly as the attorney.
Oh, certainly.
What kind of report needs to be done, and you can educate him. I'm sure Mr. Leonard is already familiar with the subject, but I was just very curious because you probably know the case. I think it was a huge landslide case. It was a few years back. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other small questions on the issues? If none, then let's go ahead and open this consent calendar for public comment. If we have any members of the public wishing to be heard on matters on the consent calendar, please raise your hands to be recognized. Seeing none, we will close public comment on the consent calendar. Do we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar with the exception of the September 21st meeting minutes, which we'll see next meeting?
So moved.
And do we have a second? Ms. Turner for a second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Mekachek with a second by Councilmember Turner. Councilmember Turner?
Yes.
Councilmember Mekachek?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi?
Yes.
And Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
That motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Moving now to our public hearings, unfinished business. This is to continue the discussion regarding direction regarding the attendance at the Regional Housing Number Allocation Appeal hearing on October 22nd of 2021. Mr. Artist, did you have further staff report for us?
Yes, as mentioned, Mr. Mayor, it is a continuation from last time, and we have our consultants from EMC Planning Group, Richard James and Michael Groves, I believe, with us both on the line this evening to present their slide presentation as proposed, as they would be presenting it at the RHNA appeal hearing. And further discussion points may be as if council members would like to attend and speak as individuals in their, maybe not in their council capacities. Of course, if more than one of you will be attending at the appeals hearing as well during the public comment period. But I think the presentation which will be presented this evening should well cover the process going forward. And if council has any comments or suggestions for the consultants with their presentation, that would be wonderful. We have to formulate a list of individuals who will be attending the meeting as well as presenting on behalf of the city. And we're looking for council direction on that, the final blessing for the consultants to present and move forward, as well as if any of, like I mentioned, anybody else wishes to speak, then we will provide the information to the ABAG reps and they will give us access. That concludes my comments and I'm open for questions.
All right. One question I have, I don't have my notes in front of me from last week. How long is the presentation period allocated to Monte Sereno for the initial presentation and counter?
Thank you, Mayor. They give us 5 minutes to present, and I believe the public comments are going to be the standard 3 minutes for individuals. Then there is a 1 hour kind of hearing where our case will be discussed by the board, the ABAG board. One other thing I left out, and this is a refresher from last time, it was also mentioned, recommended by the consultant, that our city planner, who knows all the rules about setbacks and such, be in attendance during the ABAG panel discussion so that they could be available to answer questions as well. So they will be on the list.
Right, thank you. Okay, so next you wanted to have EMC proceed with their presentation materials, show us what they would look like. Is that the plan?
That is correct. And I believe here they are. Who do we have with us this evening?
Hi, Richard James, principal with EMC Planning Group. And I don't believe Michael's on the call or on the meeting.
Yeah, I don't see him. So it looks like you're on your own here.
Yeah, so this is basically going to be a run through of the slideshow. This is a draft of what we would be presenting to ABAG. And so I'll just go through it as though I were presenting it to ABAG. And then, of course, we're open to any comments on how this could be improved or, any better present the city's case. So good afternoon. Monte Sereno is presenting its appeal of the 6th cycle RHNA allocation. Next slide, please. As you can see, Monte Sereno's allocation has more than tripled from the 5th to the 6th cycle, from 61 to 193 units. Next slide, please. This is a chart that shows Monte Sereno's allocations compared to other communities in Santa Clara County. And although the percent of the total is very small, keep in mind the population of Monte Sereno is also very small as compared to the rest of the county. Next slide. There are 3 bases for appeal authorized by Government Code Section 65584. Failure to adequately consider local planning unique to the jurisdiction. Failure to determine a share in accordance with the RHNA methodology and in a manner supportive of the legislative objectives, and significant and unforeseen change in circumstance. Next slide. In the letter that the city submitted, we made a case for all 3 of those bases, but in the 5-minute presentation, we would like to focus on basis number 1, that ABAG failed to consider local planning factors. Those factors that we'd really like to highlight today are wildfire hazard zones, the lack of available land suitable for development, the jobs housing balance, and the lack of transit access. Next slide, please. So this map shows wildfire hazard zones. These are very high wildfire hazard. In addition, once you get past where the red line breaks into the yellow, that's the local response area, and there's a moderate fire danger. Actually, there's a high and then a moderate fire danger beyond that red, going into the yellow, which are considered to be the potential sites because they're not constrained by the very high fire hazard. Next. So Monte Sereno has very few vacant sites. There are only 3 vacant sites that are located outside the very high fire hazard area. And just a note to the council members, we'll be changing that to very high. There are only 3¼ acres of usable vacant land in that area. And the largest of those vacant parcels is only 1.5 acres. The sites are inappropriate for affordable multifamily housing, which requires generally a larger site and good access. Next slide. This slide shows the location of the 3 vacant parcels that exist outside of the very high fire hazard area. You'll see 5 others are shown in yellow, but those sites are all currently developed. They are not actually vacant. Also note the site farthest to the west has a very long corridor into it. It's a flag lot. That's about a 20-foot wide by 300-foot long access corridor. And the site at the eastern side is basically a street right of way. It's 50 feet wide and 600 and some feet deep. And about 400 feet into it, it narrows to only 5 feet deep. So again, not suitable for high density residential. Next slide. Jobs housing balance is, many people know, Monte Sereno is an entirely residential city. So adding housing in a city that's already essentially 100% housing will simply throw the jobs housing balance further out of balance. All the jobs, of course, are elsewhere within Silicon Valley. Furthermore, there are no commercial districts within the city that could be considered for rezoning to residential to increase the potential for housing. The furthering the housing imbalance will exacerbate commute traffic and greenhouse gas emissions. And the next slide. This map demonstrates the lack of transit access so that anyone who were to inhabit any of these new housing areas would have at least an 0.8 of a mile walk to the nearest transit station. So as we said in the previous slide, this increases vehicle miles traveled, traffic congestion, and greenhouse gas emissions. They're certainly in opposition to a lot of overriding state goals. And the next slide, please. So in conclusion, Monte Sereno is constrained by very high fire hazards throughout much of it. I think 1/3 of the parcels and nearly half the geographic area. Monte Sereno only has 3¼ acres of vacant land outside of the very high fire hazard area. And there's a housing imbalance and a lack of adequate transit. So our request to ABAG is to reduce Monte Sereno's RHNA allocation from 193 units to 97 units. Thank you. That concludes the presentation.
Great. Thank you. Since I'm already talking, I've got a couple of technical comments just real quickly. On the final slide, I think there's a reference to the housing imbalance. I think you'd want to make sure that that's the housing imbalance and some tie back to say that that housing imbalance is in favor of housing. Again, it's clear we're 100% residential, so most people have the opposite housing imbalance problem. So this just continues to make it worse and does not put housing near jobs. It actually puts more housing in a fully residential community that then becomes a commute to the nearest jobs. So if that could be explained on that 3rd bullet point on the last slide.
Okay.
The other general comment I would have would be a comment that I think some more technical information would be helpful to let them know the exact population of Monte Sereno, 3,000 some odd, according to the last census. We can get you the exact numbers, and the number of parcels in the city, the total total acres within the city, and then the number of acres available for development. So these may be items that you can add a lot of specificity to the presentation.
Okay, I've noted all of that. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, now you've got your hand up and you're first on my screen. So
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. You were presenting to the ABAG board, so I'll pretend I am the ABAG board, and I'll cross-examine you on a couple of things, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Get you ready for it. You said there was a fire danger We just had a fire presentation from the fire marshal or the chief of the fire department, and we
Correct.
only had like 2 or 3 fires or so in the last couple of years, and some of them are really, they're pretty minimal. So what data do you have to back up that there is a fire danger in Monte Sereno?
Okay, well, we're going with the CAL FIRE fire hazard rating, which is for very high fire hazard in most of Monte Sereno. And then within the local responsibility area, that's outside of the CAL FIRE jurisdiction. In those areas, we have still a high fire danger and then a moderate fire danger that extends all the way to the northern city limit and a finger. So this is presenting the best case. The state is most interested in the very high fire danger, and that's what's shown in red, but there is additional high fire danger beyond that.
I'd suggest you also add in the evacuation issues because of fire.
Right.
People get out. All right. The next question I'm going to ask you is, SB 9 and 10 have passed. I mean, you say that there's no land in Monte Sereno, but SB 9 and 10 now allows any developer to come in and basically put 4 houses on one lot. So you don't really need land. You just need a developer to come in and make 4 lots out of everything. So if they can do that, don't you have plenty of land in Monte Sereno now?
We do, but it's still, there's not that many lots in Monte Sereno compared to the Bay Area as a whole and Santa Clara County as a whole. We expect we'll get quite a few, maybe all of our housing through either ADUs or SB 9 lot splits, but we still think the number should be reduced.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just giving you some questions.
Good old practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, and the other question I was going to ask you is, Monte Sereno has very large lots. So what's the problem with putting ADUs on allowing ADUs in every lot to at least cover, right? And I don't know, those would be very low income, but they will at least cover all the low income requirements. So the low income draft requirement was 30 units. There's at least 30 units that ADUs can be built on, or people will build. And do ADUs actually qualify under these RHNA proposals, or are they considered?
Yeah, ADUs can count as very low income units. There's also the potential that the city could put income restrictions on certain ADUs or on all ADUs. Obviously, the junior ADUs, which are internal to an existing house, are even more affordable than a standard standalone ADU. And we are looking in some jurisdictions at restricting ADUs within the fire hazard areas. Try to minimize that because Monte Sereno is not alone in having those long, narrow roads up into the hills.
So is there a reason to reduce the category for low income and very low income, or moderate income, when ADUs might be able to justify those or satisfy that category?
Yeah, I think from the city standpoint, again, the point is that we have a minimal number of lots, and I don't know how many of those lots we can count on to produce ADUs at a very low income or low income rate.
Well, given the size, the average size of Monte Sereno lot is probably a couple of acres.
Right. It's just a matter of getting homeowners on board to, make the effort and put out the capital to build those ADUs.
Yeah, but that's a different issue, isn't it? I mean, the issue is, do we have space or not? So space is there, and if you zone it, then obviously we get a lot of flack for doing that. But I don't know if you can make the argument that there's no land available when there is land available for ADUs. All right, so those are a couple of things I was thinking about, because I think a lot of this is going to be the presentation that you've made. That's already been submitted to them already, so they would have reviewed most of it.
No,
this is new stuff.
This has not been submitted to ABAG yet. We can make alterations to it.
Yeah, but is it part of the packet that was submitted in the appeal process or no?
No, we submitted just a letter and some attachments. The presentation is not in their hands yet.
yeah, this is the opportunity to expand and make that verbal presentation. So to take the letter, make it into the presentation and give that presentation. And so that's really the brainstorming that's going on this evening, is how to make that presentation as impactful as possible, and how to deliver that presentation, and then how, as you mentioned, Mr. Lahi, how to respond should there be questions asked or challenges raised, which I think is good here. One thing I wanted to follow up on, a couple of things you said there. One, I think coming back to the jobs housing balance here, Monte Sereno is not the right place to be putting more units in, whether it's ADUs or more housing, because it's not helping the environment. It's not getting housing close to jobs. It's simply doing the opposite of that. It's burdening the properties here, and then burdening the transportation corridors and putting more cars on the road. So I think that's going to be a really key thing to come back to. For the fire and the evacuation routes, I wanted to follow up on what you raised there, Mr. Lahi. The bringing that map up like you did, I think is good, but basically saying what we're talking about to the left of this map is the Santa Cruz Mountains, and that's what is above the Highway 9, which you're seeing is the big line there that cuts through Monte Sereno. And that we're talking about the CZU fire complex that had every danger of coming over the hill and down into Monte Sereno, and there being the basically single line, only a couple of exit routes out of the city and those high fire danger areas. Now, I've heard that even Paradise is not fit for high fire danger exemptions, but at some point the stupidity has to cease, because they need to build where it makes sense to build. And I kind of wrap that back around. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to get emotional about this stuff. Why build it in Monte Sereno when you can build it where there are real transit corridors, where people can actually get to their jobs by using transit or their feet, and really putting more housing in a bedroom community that's tucked up and against the hills is the wrong solution. And to triple the numbers doesn't make sense in that kind of area. So I think to study that, and then if you're doing this presentation, to get emotional on our behalf about why this is just wrong. It's not that we don't want to do our part. We did our part last time. In fact, that's another point to be made. Monte Sereno hit our numbers last time. How many cities can say that? We want to hit our numbers for the next time. We need those numbers to be realistic. And so those are some of the kind of emotional pleas that I would wrap onto this, as opposed to simply the hard and fast of here's our summary, these are the points. All right, I know you're taking notes on that. So let's move now. Let's move now to, and I may come back to you, Mr. Lahi, but let's give everybody a chance here. I know I keep talking too. But Councilmember Makachek's next on the list. I know, Ms. Turner, you've got a lot of things to talk about too, but I'm just going across the list. So Mr. Makachek.
Thank you. Could you go to the first slide, please? And I'll give you comments by slide. So, okay, next slide. You just back up one, please. You may want to make this a graph so that, or a bar chart, so you can see it's tripled. You know, it's just more impactful. Make it real simple. Next slide.
I was actually wondering if we need to even show this. That doesn't really do much for our case, I don't think.
I don't think it does either, unless it's got a percentage that, yeah, I don't like this particular slide. I actually agree with that. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah, let me jump in on that last one. I had looked at that slide, thought the same thoughts, and whether we could make a population argument or something, but our allocation is straight down the line following population numbers. So it's not that we're getting an unfair amount based on population and the county and the region. So I don't, the argument isn't there to make the population argument that would be the natural segue off of this slide. So it may make sense to go ahead and lose it.
Next slide, please. This is fine. Next slide, please. So there's the third bullet, job/housing balance or imbalance or whatever that was Mayor Leopold referred to previously. I do want to repeat that transit access on a subsequent slide. Continue. Next slide, please. This one, in the written document, that piece in the center where the geography or the boundary of Monte Sereno makes it look like we don't have a fire hazard in the center there, and that was filled in red on in the report. And I'm just wondering if you could emphasize that in the same way, in that you do the boundary in one color, but continue that red in the center. So it just shows that like fires don't stop at city boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And then the legend in the lower left, you may want to move that to the top left. But if this is a screenshot of a website, then I suppose you can't really do that. It's just how to make it more impactful. Next slide, please. And sorry, and you may want to back up. You may want to just put an arrow in going to the red zone or something. And then Highway 9 is cutting right through the red part. And that's and I believe Mayor Leopold referred to it earlier, that's our emergency exit corridor. So that's going right through the high wildfire zone, or extremely high, or whatever it is. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, wait, do you want to do very few vacant sites? Like that's only 3 vacant sites. You know, you make it in the point right below, but from very 3 over to only 3. You can consider that. Next slide, please. This one, it may be helpful you get to it in the next slide, but if you put on the transit map here, where the transit lines go, because they go down Winchester Boulevard, and then there's transit on Highway 9, but those are the only ones. But just to show it on the map has more impact. It's like, you know, these are islands, and they're a long way away from transit. Next slide, please. You may want to take the periods punctuation at the end of each sentence, because that's inconsistent. Next slide, please. This, you have that blue line going over to the transit, and it looks like you've got a transit map on here. But I think there's also one on Highway 9, but it's not labeled that that's where the transit line is on Winchester Boulevard. So I thought that would make it more impactful. And then if you have something that says against that blue line says, you know, transit corridor or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Or identify the VTA line.
Yes, yes. Next slide, please. How do you get from 193 to 97? Just, I can't recall.
I believe that was half. I wasn't personally involved with forming the letter and the appeal, but I believe that's roughly half.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there was a rationale to that half or not.
Okay. Go back one slide, please. One more back, please. The second bullet point from the end, no commercial districts exist for rezoning to residential or mixed use. I know that other jurisdictions are moving from commercial to mixed use, and I just thought you may include that.
I'm also seeing perhaps that line would be more appropriate on the previous slide that addresses lack of sites.
Yes, that would put the point home. And then my final comment is Mayor Luthold said emotional, but I would change that to having some being passionate about this versus emotional about it. That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Turner.
Yes, I wanted to pivot a little bit here and talk. I wanted to ask City Manager Leonardis if I heard correctly that there's going to be a 1-hour discussion after every every city presents their RHNA numbers, their case. Is that what you said?
Thank you, Councilmember Turner. Yes, so essentially on October 22nd, which is our appeal day, it runs roughly from 9 to 5, and we are probably one of, I guess it would be 7 hearings that day. I believe we're going to be after lunch about 1 p.m. The hearings begin at 9 a.m. and essentially we have 5 minutes to present. It's a total of an hour's time. So for each hearing. Now, I'm not sure if they end in 45 minutes and they get a 15-minute break in between each one, or how it happens. I guess it just depends on the extent of each individual, every individual case presented. But that is my understanding.
Okay.
Basically, it's an hour total, and it probably includes the public comments as well. So,
okay.
And then their decision will go behind closed doors if they don't reach a decision in person. I actually think that's what happens. They tell you later anyway, so they take it. But I guess the discussion could continue behind closed doors if it's, if it doesn't look like it concludes.
Okay, so let me just say this. When SCAG did their appeals, I attended every one of them. And at that meeting, we didn't have SB 9 and SB 10 signed by Governor Newsom. My concern at this point in time is that I would suggest that EMC get familiar with both SB 9 and SB 10 that Governor Newsom signed September 16, I believe it is. SB 9 and SB 10 would take effect January 2022. And one of the things that SB 9 and 10 has in the bill that is different than what we were talking about all along is that the bills do not protect fire zones. The buildings can be put in fire zones. For example, Paradise, they can build as many buildings as they can in Paradise. The only exception to that rule for all the cities is Greenville, because Greenville has a population below 2,500 people. So we need, when they're talking in that hour, they could bring in SB 9 and SB 10. The other thing that we need to look out for in SB 9 and SB 10 is this half-mile transit, right? It has to be half-mile from transit. It has to be in an urban area, which means any city, and it's 3/4 of the city has to have urban uses, which we qualify. Now, one of the things that's new with the bill that Governor Newsom signed is this thing called the bus corridor. And the bus corridor is something where property values are normally lower. So what they're saying is that every house, every single family home on that bus corridor is subject to the lot split. So I think these are some of the things we need to look at. And even as we prepare for our general plan for 2050, we need to know where we're going to put all these things. There's also something that was introduced that's brand new, that CCNRs and HOAs are protected from SB 9 and SB 10. And so that's new. So I would suggest that we all look at SB 9 and SB 10 before this meeting, because it may come up in that hour's discussion.
Right. Thank you for that. That's something for MC to follow up and for all of us to be following up on as well. Anything else on your list, Ms. Turner?
No, those are all the major things. I got lots of little things, but we could talk about that later on.
All right, thank you. Okay, anyone else with initial comments? Otherwise, we can circle this around. We still need to open public comment, and then we come back to further council discussion on this. So let's go ahead and do that at this time. I will now open this matter for public discussion. If there are any members of the public wishing to be recognized and heard on this matter, please raise your hand at this time. Seeing none, we will close public discussion and return this now for council member discussion. So further council discussion on the overall presentation, how we go about moving towards preparing for October 22nd, or the specifics that we want to cover here. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Thank you. Yeah, as we can see, this is like a moving target. You know, it's a developing, complex area, and we did our appeal, and I wasn't very comfortable with how we're approaching it. I mean, there may be an argument that there's not enough land, but then there's ADUs that can go almost everywhere, and then there's an argument on there's some plots. This whole SB 9 thing. My thought would be this should be a cohesive effort. I think Mayor Luthor, I'd like you to lead the effort and have the planning people help you out with it. But you almost have to think on your feet as you get there, and all these issues come up with the legal issues and the what's happening with the Monte Sereno, the different zones that are going on. And I think Councilmember Turner is also well suited to assist you with all that stuff. But it's almost like you have to think on your feet, and as an attorney, you're used to doing that in some very trying times. So I think these slides would be helpful, and it really is a team effort. So I think it should go as a team with you leading the effort, and with the planning people assisting you in whatever role seems appropriate. That would be my thought on it.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Turner, you still have your hand up there?
Oh, no, sorry. No, no.
Well, you've got your hand up, so I'm going to call on you to speak next anyway.
I'm gonna take it down.
All right. Councilmember Mekachek, comments, thoughts, further input?
Oh, I provided all my comments, and I think that we just have to do our best. I would underscore Mayor Pro Tem Alaki's comments regarding mayor's leadership in this.
Great, thank you. Mr. James, did you have any further comments or input at the moment?
I don't believe so. I've got a lot of notes, and we will put together a revised slideshow and send that to Steve, and then he can distribute it for some final look by the council members, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, thank you. So I think,
Mr. Mayor,
yeah, Mr. Leonard.
I wanted to add one more comment. There is a Arena Appeals Day number 3 this Friday, 2 to 5 p.m. and Arena Appeals Day Friday, 10:15, 1 to 5 p.m. If council wanted to tune in, I did send an email with the links, and if you wanted to watch, as well as Mr. James, I don't know if he's had the opportunity to watch any of these appeals days yet either, but based on what Councilmember Turner said, it would be interesting to know if anybody on the appeals, on the ABAG board brought up the SB 9 and SB 10 matters.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly, I think we should all plan to watch some of these. We should see how they're being conducted, how the time is being split up, whether public comment is beneficial, and whether we should stir up more of our public. We certainly have some passionate people in the community who care a lot about these issues. And whether that adds to the discussion or whether that takes away attention from the focus and the time where kind of the subject matter experts ourselves with EMC's guidance really know exactly what is relevant and isn't relevant and is making an impression and is not making an impression. So I think if we can all watch some of those presentations and then come back to this larger question. I know we've had some discussion about this and it's been batted around. I'm not ready to offer a really strong opinion one way or the other, or to lobby one way or the other as to whether this is something that definitely should be done by the city's leadership and essentially is an obligation and makes a bigger impression if presented by me as mayor. And as Mr. Elahi points out, I do have the training to make that presentation and be responsive, but I would need the help and support of EMC to do that, because very much the statewide subject matter specialists here who helped us put this together. If I'm doing it, if Mr. James is doing it, it's kind of the inverse, where as we had input today, we need to make sure that that feedback of the local expertise is put into his hands so that he's really as passionate as we are on this issue and as plugged in as can be. And also let's watch these other presentations to see how it's working in terms of what role city planners are being asked to play in responsiveness, what role city managers are being asked to play in this process, so that we really have the right team to deal with this in the most productive way. The good news, we have one more meeting where we can fine tune everything and make those final decisions based on having seen other people do it. So Mr. Leonardis, did you have some further input? I just thought you were not on mute.
Mr. Mayor, we have until next Tuesday to submit our presentation materials, as well as the list of those who will be presenting at the meeting. So this Friday, the 8th, is the last opportunity for council to watch and then weigh in before next Tuesday. for the submission deadline. The 15th is the last opportunity for council or anyone else to watch before our presentation day on the 22nd, just as kind of a final opportunity. So I just want to clarify that date.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And again, probably abundance of caution. We should probably be putting Mr. James down as a presenter, myself down as a presenter, even though it doesn't make sense probably to have more than one person because of the 5-minute limit. Somebody's going to need to really hit it hard and talk quickly. But certainly in terms of any follow-on, we'll all be there. So we should be listed for that. Yourself, certainly the city planner. I don't know if city engineer Khan should be listed as available. If our city planner is up to speed, may or may not be someone to put on the list. And then we should take a look and see whether other council members should be on the list, and whether, I guess we talked about this a little last time, whether having more than 2 people actively participating, probably not a Brown Act violation, given that this is a public forum that's being hosted on the subject. So if we want to have other council members listed as possible resources available, if people want to make sure that they are listed as active, let's make sure that names get on the list. We can always have people non-appear or choose not to appear later. But, and then I guess we need a clearinghouse for this. So Mr. Leonardis and Mr. James, in terms of making sure that we get our names in and are on the list for Tuesday. If you all will follow up on that, and then gather information from anybody who watches meetings this Friday and feeds back Friday or Monday. So those are my thoughts on it. Mr. Elahi, did you have your hand back up? You did, and now you didn't. Okay.
I do now. I do now. So
there you go.
No, I think those are good suggestions. I think it'd be good to have you as a mayor lead the effort, and James can help you out. They've done a good job with preparing documentation, but it is a moving target, and I think we need to really think about how we cut down our numbers. I don't think we gave it enough thought. We just halved everything, and that was that. But those different categories, some of them we may be able to accommodate a larger number of units, and on some of the categories we may want them reduced so that the total might still end up being the same, but at least it'll be like we gave it some thought as to what category our city is able to handle with ADUs, and what category we can with the 3 lots we have, and what category, So some of that thing may still be flexible, and you as a mayor, I think, can probably look at that and say, okay, do I need to change that or don't need to change that? Whereas the planning individuals will be looking at us for guidance, and they will not have that flexibility. So I think it'll be great for you to be in that position to to make your move as things come up.
All right. I just wanted to check, do we have the presentation as presented here this evening in our packet? I was just clicking through and wasn't sure if I'd seen that or not. If not, let's make sure that this gets circulated to everyone.
I believe that the presentation that's in the packet was a previous version. This current version that was presented today has not been included, so I will add that to the packet, to the internet packet.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Turner.
Yes, I just wanted to quickly make a comment here. Our numbers rose 300%, and I remember when we talked about this the last time, most of the cities, their numbers went up by 1.5, right? Ours went up by 300%. So I think that's 1.5, and that's how we got to the 1.5 number.
Thank you. I think that's right on. The number was not picked out of a hat.
Yeah.
It was justified by what was going on in the surrounding communities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking about not the total number, but the number for each different categories, as to whether we've given enough thought to whether we can accommodate a higher number in some of those categories. Because that might be the give and take.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying on that, and it's an interesting thing because, of course, ADUs have the amazing effect of knocking out the low and very low income, which is, of course, probably not how they really work in real life in Monte Sereno, but that's what they are and what they do. So, to some extent, ADUs are probably our most likely way to accomplish a whole bunch of units. Whether it'll be more or less than we've seen historically, it's going to be an interesting question. We don't know. Have the people who wanted ADUs already built them out in the last cycle, or are people excited about this and post-pandemic that it's another way to expand the uses of their land and they may be looking for it? I think we just have no idea what real life is going to do in terms of production of units. But it seems to me the more we can have at the low and very low income, as long as ADUs are qualifying, it actually looks better for us and is probably easier for us to meet our numbers.
Yeah, I think we should really take a look at it because that might be our out. And we can tell them, okay, we'll build the number of units you're asking, or well, not quite the number of units you're asking, but we can build more, but we need to move it around so that what's practical for Monte Sereno is what should be considered.
Yeah, and I think the point there will also be, and kind of the lawyer in you is reaching out and saying, you know, what are the challenges? What's the cross-examination? If we're just there complaining about our numbers, that's not very meaningful. If we're saying we've analyzed these numbers carefully and we can produce more at the low end, what we can't do is this sweet spot in the middle because we don't have middle income. And we understand what our city and what we can produce and what we can't produce. That's probably more compelling to the board. So we should be ready. Again, the combination of myself, Mr. James, our city planner, our city manager, we should have those facts and figures at our fingertips and be ready to address those challenges.
And I think that would also be helpful politically. I mean, Gordon Newsom makes a big deal about affordable housing, even though SB 9 and 10 has nothing to do with it. This way, Monte Sereno is pledging for, committing itself to some affordable housing.
Yeah, and it really does add to the mix where we're very high income on the one side, and yet those very high income units actually add the ADUs, which create a reservoir of low income housing available.
Right. Okay, good.
Great. All right, anything further? Otherwise, it sounds like this will be coming back, but Mr. Leonardis and Mr. James and myself, to some extent, will coordinate this so that we get our names and in by Tuesday, and that the input can be gathered in a proper method for that.
Yeah, just to be clear, Mr. Leonardis, do you have to specify as to who is representing the city or as one person, or do you can you just put down 2 or 3 names there?
Thank you for your question, Mayor Pro Tem. I think we just do as the mayor suggested and put names on the list, and then whoever we decide to be the lead person, probably Mr. James ultimately, or the mayor, we can, the day of the hearing, have that be done.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little bit like when people are giving presentations on their housing variances. They have the architect standing with them at the podium, and one or the other of them gives the presentation, but they're both there when it turns to questions.
Sounds good.
All right. I think we've got our direction on that to bring it back, but to make sure that we're providing our input through Mr. Leonardis, Mr. James, and so forth in a Brown Act compliant way over the next few days. Okay, so we'll close that out for now and move to new business. New business, our first item is to accept the SeeClickFix update and provide direction to staff. So do we have a staff report on this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, indeed. So as you know, it was requested by council, I think it was our last meeting, to agendize the SeeClickFix to see how it has gone so far. And this evening we are here to do that. SeeClickFix has been implemented on August 20th. So we've been in it for about 6 weeks. We have had 10 inquiries, and some of those inquiries had multiple items. And of course, some of them were submitted by council members, and thank you for that. and all of those items had been closed out. I did find actually one error this evening. Is something that the when we had the striping done over there on Poppy Lane and Vista and Poppy Lane and over there by Dave's Avenue, those two locations, I think the stop sign did not get completed, the lighted up stop sign, so we have to get that completed by the contractor. But for the most part, all of the items have been closed out and the system seems to be working very well. In my packet this evening, there is a report. I don't know if you all had a chance to see the report showing the results. It says from 7/1 to 10/1 because it's done on a quarterly basis. As I mentioned earlier, we implemented it on August 20th, and this goes to 10/1, which was last Friday when we issued the council agenda. And you can see the different categories: potholes and pavement, traffic and street sign issue, code enforcement, graffiti, public records request, vegetation removal. We had some of each of those totaling 10 total asks. And it shows the time it took to acknowledge and the time it took to close out the items. You can see the codes at the top of the report: DTA, days to acknowledge; DTC, days to close. O&O, open and overdue, was another category, which I'm glad that we didn't have any items checked in that box. So we completed them all in a timely fashion. The way SeeClickFix works internally is that whenever somebody downloads the app, and I included a copy of the postcard that we sent out to all of the residents in the mail, and we've been publicizing it. We've publicized it at our picnic. I think we publicized it on Nextdoor when we first launched it, and on our newsfeed, et cetera, et cetera. They download the app and they send us an inquiry, and I get an email. All the emails come to me directly, and whether it's for myself to handle or for one of the other staff members, they all have an internal category to who they are assigned, and then we can track them. And then we update them with photographs. With the, we acknowledge the receipt. We, acknowledge. We try to come up with a time frame of when we will be completing it. We acknowledge with photos when they are completed, and then we close them out. So that's essentially the process we've been using. It's been working quite well. We still do get inquiries from our normal means. We have, of course, our website where they can still fill out a request for a fix, as well as the SeeClickFix off of our website. So we have both of those methods. And believe it or not, this past week I received 2 inquiries from, a person who cuts hair in downtown Los Gatos, and they know Monte Sereno people. They're cutting their hair, and they said, "Hey, I got this situation," and lo and behold, that individual contacted me, and I have 2 items to handle. So we get inquiries walking in the door still. We get inquiries over the phone. However they come, they all come. But SeeClickFix has just provided another avenue for us in the cell phone era, and it's been really a good thing for us to be able to track items better. So that concludes my comments, and I'm open for questions, suggestions.
All right, great, thank you. So we'll run through some council member questions. We'll open our official public comment and then come back to wrap up discussion. Any council member questions on the front end? Ms. Turner.
Yes, I asked Ms. Radcliffe to put in 3 files that I'd like to share with the council here, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. So Ms. Radcliffe, can you show the file that's entitled Enterprise Systems?
Give me 1 second.
Okay, while she's doing that, one of the things that I've been doing is I've been looking at the Los Altos Hills SeeClickFix. Los Altos Hills is very close to Monte Sereno in the number of residents. They have 6,000 residents, and they've been using SeeClickFix since 2017. And since 2017, and they also have a lot of applications, enterprise applications that they have installed on their website. And I'd like to share some of that with you. Although I'm digressing a little bit here, I won't digress too much. But the first one here is a list of all the enterprise systems that they have. And by the way, I want to say thank you so much for implementing this, Steve, and to staff for doing this at the picnic. And I think it was a good way to introduce this to the residents. But if you look at this slide, what it shows is all the applications that Los Altos Hills has, enterprise application. That means they're all computerized. And if you look at Civic Plus, that is where we have SeeClickFix. SeeClickFix is part of Civic Plus. And the department and the custodian for SeeClickFix is the city clerk. And for us, we can put in, gosh, I can't remember the name, Reynolds' new system. Steve, can you remind me of the name of that thing we put in? Civic.
I think you're referring to ClearGov.
Yes, ClearGov. We can put in ClearGov into one of this. And I think also Ali put in, upgraded our planning system from paper and pencil to computerized, right? So we can do that. So the implementation of all of this was done by the city manager. And now I think one of the things that we can do is move the implementation of SeeClickFix to the city clerk. And this way, the staff can have responsibility for the implementation as we move along, and the city manager can have the accountability for all of this. And let me give you some suggestions here after we implemented this at the picnic. One of the things that I think we should make this a part of every time we put out Peaceful Mountain is to put in a section there on SeeClickFix. This will remind our residents to install it on their system. One of the things that I noticed on the flyer, and maybe, as we're going through this, Michelle could take some notes, where we can add, if you look at the flyer today, I remember at the picnic, the mayor was talking to Philippa Alves, and Philippa says, I don't remember my password. So I think one of the things we need to do on the flyer is to put the QR code, right? And to put the Monte Sereno logo. So this way, as we mail them out, if there's no Monte Sereno logo, our residents will take a look at it and will say, oh, I'm just gonna throw this away because this is just an ad. So that's one suggestion. I think we should mail the flyers out, or we should give them to council members to distribute them to residents in your area. The other thing is to formalize the KPIs, the key product indicators, right? Number of opens, number of closed, the number of days to close, sorting by pavement, like City Manager Leonardi's talked about. We should also advertise, for example, in the Los Gatos newspaper, right? The new one. And we should look at BKMs, the best known methods from Los Altos Hills. Now, Michelle, can you put up the other thing that shows Connect, the file called Connect?
One moment.
Okay, so this is the website for Los Altos Hills. And if you look at their website, they have it on their website, SeeClickFix. So when residents come in and they say, how do I connect to the city? They can connect in two ways, one for emergency calls and one for non-emergency calls. The non-emergency calls is SeeClickFix. So I think we should change our website to include this. And then the last one is the the watch area, Michelle, if you could put that up, the last file. Yeah, that one. So if you look at Los Altos Hills, they've had this since 2017. They've had over 800 calls. So that's an average of 200 calls a year. So if we can get ours to 75 calls per year, I think we're doing pretty well. So, but I think we need to be able to support this and ongoing support. That's why I am advocating that we get we turn this over to city staff, and city staff can come to our monthly, like Andrea used to do, to report to us how SeeClickFix is doing. So those are my suggestions.
All right. Thank you. And I see looks like the city clerk has her hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. So the suggestion is to have me, the city clerk, be more of a project manager for SeeClickFix.
Yeah, on a daily basis.
To be the contact to just ensure that whatever requests are coming in are being routed to the correct department and tracking to see where it's at.
Yes. And
Okay.
in fact, this is how Andrea got to know a lot of our citizens.
Okay.
Is because she, when citizens would call up, she would respond. And so she became pretty well known with our residents. So I think this would be an opportunity for you to mingle with our citizens and to also come in front of city council, every month or whenever you feel like you want to report on SeeClickFix.
And the end goal is to eventually just have a monthly report of 0 issues, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. I think Ms. Turner touched on this a little bit, but I think one of the things that I wanted to underline in what she just said was getting this out in the Peaceful Mountain Monitor, getting this out on the website, getting a QR code link that takes directly to a Monte Sereno customized version of SeeClickFix. I believe now you have to go to the App Store, you have to look at SeeClickFix, you have to download SeeClickFix, then you have to tell it you're in Monte Sereno. Whereas a lot of cities have moved up a level where they can use the link directly to go into SeeClickFix for their city when it installs. I'm not sure if that's something we might have to pay SeeClickFix extra for, or if that's simply something they hadn't implemented yet. But that's something that wraps around that. And then if we have our own custom QR code, that's the way the kids these days are doing everything. That you aim your phone at the code, and it takes you in and does most of the work of getting you to the right place and getting the installation done. So I think that if we can do that and get a custom QR code that'll do that for people, then we can publish that on the flyer, on the postcards, and on the website, and of course a live link on the website. So those were my expansion on those thoughts. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, those are really great suggestions. I think this is going to be a very powerful tool, and Councilmember Turner has pointed out all the different things it can be used for. I mean, right now, if you go to the Montessorinos website, you don't see it anywhere. And I guess if you follow the email, there's a separate hyperlink to the SeeClickFix itself. So that'd be a good place to start. And I don't know if that was something they should have done originally and put it on the website, but it's a good point. And then all these other things that are coming up, it'll be a great place to have everything in one location, and then have an archive and a history of all the things that have been requested and what has been accomplished or what is still pending. So great thoughts. I think this will be a powerful tool, and I think it'll help our city manager and the city do a good job by its residents.
Great, thank you. And yeah, we had the comment come through that the direct branded with your city logo is an additional cost compared to the basic software. So that may be one of the reasons why we've taken that shortcut initially while we get to know the software. But making the decision whether or not it makes sense to upgrade is something we could look into right away. If it's a small additional cost or a large additional cost to get it branded for us.
Yeah, at least the links should be everywhere. So we can start using it, and branding would help.
Right, and if we don't have the branded direct to our own site version of it, the links are there with a very clear instruction. Download the basic SeeClickFix, search Monte Sereno, add the city as your home city, and go from there. So the link online should have a very clear explanation. We should use the Philippa Alva test. Can Philippa follow this and get it installed on her phone and issue her first note to the city? So thank you for the input on that. Further questions or comments? Let's actually, let me take a quick break from that, open this officially to public comment. Since we haven't done that yet, we've done what we often do and jumped into discussion. If there are any members of the public wishing to be heard on this matter, please raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing none, we will close public comment and formally return this to council member discussion. So further discussion on the issue, on Ms. Turner's comments, anything? Otherwise, I think it's really just advisory. We're accepting the report and appreciating what's been done. I did bring up one of my, I was one of those 10, submitted the stop sign at Dave's and Poppy as an issue and was happy to see that get addressed. I was a little disappointed when it was addressed and I had to flip back and see the contract we approved for the painting of the stop sign at Dave's, Poppy, et cetera, near the school there. Because all that was done was at the intersection of Dave's and Poppy, which is a very, very faded intersection, the stop was repainted. Apparently, in looking at the pricing and the necessity and what's scheduled for the future in the corridor, Engineer Khan determined that the crosswalk there at Dave's and Poppy is acceptable enough, given that it's going to be upgraded in that near future round. But I was a little disappointed to see that people had come out and gone to the trouble of painting a very nice stop sign, but not doing new stripes for the kids. Of course, paint is expensive, sanding is expensive, and this is a temporary intersection. So it looks like the public safety issue has been taken care of in an appropriate manner. But I think this is going to be really beneficial because it lets the city know what the people see on the street, and then lets the city respond and show the people, not just the ones who are complaining about a specific issue, but anyone who's part of SeeClickFix is going to see how much work the city does day to day and how it's impacting their neighborhood. So, Mr. Leonardis and staff, thank you so much for the positive reports and for getting so much done on this initial pass-through. Okay, we'll close that issue for now, unless you have additional comments, Mr. Leonardis?
Just one more thing. We did include it on the Peaceful Mountain Monitor on the back cover, a copy of the postcard, which will be hitting mailboxes next week. So it will go to every single residence in Monte Sereno. So we will continue to publicize it through our printed medium. I think that's a great suggestion. We could put it on the back cover with the contact list every time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it is. It's going to make everybody's job a little easier, and it's a wonderful way for everyone to see how much the city is doing for them. So you can pat you on the back and you can pat yourself on the back, which is we can all get credit for what we're doing and how we're spending people's money. So thank you. Moving next to committee and commission reports. Anybody have committee and commission reports? Is that your hand up for it, Mr. Elahi? Or did I cut you off from the prior section?
Yeah, no. I did want to report on the league convention that happened last weekend. think. There was about 1,500 people there. I think people were just happy to get out and be somewhere. And it's very well attended. The issue that I think I should focus on, there's a lot of good educational material. There was a couple of resolutions since I was the voting delegate. I also attended the resolution committee meeting. I mean, a lot of time you just show up for the final place where the voting delegates are supposed to vote. But to really have an effect, you should be going to the committee meeting that happens 3 or 4 hours before the resolution, the entire delegation meeting, because that's where they pass the resolution. So the original resolution that is of interest to us had to do with sales taxes. As it stands right now, sales taxes are collected by the city where the warehouse is, basically, or where the online sales takes place. So one of the cities that wanted a change was the city of Rancho Cucamonga, which wanted the resolution to be passed that the city that gets the shipment should really be getting the sales taxes and not the city where it's being shipped from. So that was debated, and originally the committee, the resolution committee had gone along with recommending that, but there's a heavy, intensive debate on the subject, and the opposition people, basically the cities that have the warehouses that would lose money, they were saying we go broke because we build up this infrastructure, we build up the roads, and now you can't just go in there and say, okay, you want to take all the sales taxes. The resolution also said there should be some equitable consideration given to these cities that have built this up, and let the state legislature decide that. So a lot of delegates were upset at SB 9 and 10 and saying, no, we don't want the state legislature deciding anything. We need to do it ourselves. I had a chance to speak also, and I basically took the position that we don't really have enough facts. So Monte Sereno can't really decide whether you want to oppose it or support it, because if all we're going to get some crumbs and it results in a city going broke because they lost all their money, then it doesn't really help us any. On the other hand, if it's a substantial amount, then we do want to take a position on it. Interestingly, San Jose has eBay, and they collect $30 million in sales taxes every year. So they'll end up losing a big chunk of that if the resolution would be passed. You should note that so the committee changed the stand, and they basically said, okay, we'll send it back to our committee to look at it, how to make this better. When it came to vote in the main delegation hall, the procedure they follow is interesting. I mean, they basically say, okay, this is what the resolutions committee has done, and that's what we're going to vote on. And if somebody wants to oppose it, you have to file. They have to present a motion, and have that motion to amend the recommended resolution needs to pass. Now, this is at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. People have had 3 days of meetings. Nobody wants to stick around. So everybody says no. So whatever the resolution committee says will go, because nobody wants to stick around for a debate on an amendment, regardless of how valid it might be. So that's how it ended, basically. All right, that's kind of, there was another resolution on railroads, and that was non-controversial, and that passed also, which basically had to do with cleaning up the railroad tracks of debris and garbage, and providing for the homeless. Thank you. Those are that's my comment for now.
Great, thank you. Any other committee commission reports? Mr. Mekachek.
I have some reports, and then I've got some comments. Should I just roll it all into one, or you want to?
Yeah, if you'd like, let's roll it all into one.
Okay. First of all, in terms of committee reports, West Valley Solid Waste is going to go into long-term contract negotiations with their hauler and with the facility. So those are going to, it'll apparently take 2 years to get that through and done. So I just wanted to say that I believe City Manager Leonardis and City Engineer Khan are going to be on the subcommittee, as well as I think I may be on the subcommittee as well for elected officials. Then the other item that I'd like to report is, and this is a good thing, finally PG&E put in what's called a sectionalizer, and perhaps the city clerk can put up the photo that I took. And this is on Highway 9. It's, you can see that apparatus hanging down. It's essentially a switch that will start to isolate sections of the sections of the 12 kV line that goes along Highway 9. So this is a very, very good thing. Do you have the other one, the other photo? There were two, or just the one? Doesn't matter. Anyways, that was a very positive item, and the equipment that they removed was from 1292. So call it 93. So almost 30 years, or 28 years old. So that should help with our fire prevention for wildfires, and then also making the electrical infrastructure in Monte Sereno more resilient. So that's a positive thing. And then my last item is, I noticed on Highway 9 westbound, just west of Boston Way, there is the vegetation that's now going down into the bicycle lane. And it would be super helpful, City Manager Leonardis, if you could use your connections with Caltrans to have that addressed and cleaned up, because there's a sign that says bike lane and it's super dangerous there. That can, oh, and then the final thing that I'll report on is the rate case in front of the CPUC with San Jose Water Company, and that is starting to really take action, and it'll be quite an aggressive schedule between now and the end of the year. So that is moving forward, and I just want everyone to know about that. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. Anyone else with reports or comments? I had seen Ms. Turner active a moment ago, but it appears not. All right, we can come back if anybody has anything further, but let's go ahead and move to Ms. Turner. Did you have committee commission reports or council member comments you wanted to make? No, good. Okay, city manager's report, Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next meeting on October 19th, we are going to have the annual Site and Architectural Council joint meeting, and we were going to schedule it as a study session to cover the results of the consultant's work for the objective standards update. So we were going to be sending out an email to poll, of course, all the council members of the availability for 6 p.m. on October 19th, as well as all the Site and Architectural Committee members. So I just wanted to give that update. And as I mentioned earlier, the latest edition of the newsletter will be hitting the mailboxes next week. And we had some resident contributions this time. So a little bit changed from the previous, but very informative. We have a lot of information in there. So look forward to receiving that. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone have any future agenda items that we haven't already discussed as coming forward on near-term agendas? Seeing none, that brings us to the end of the calendar.
I just wanted to, there was an agenda item I'd emailed on, and I think City Manager Leonardis is going to look at that had to do with the initiative that's going to go into place. That's already been, that's the initiative against SB 9 and SB 10 basically. And it's already been framed now and been submitted for final approval. And I think as a city, we should consider it. And I think one of the questions will be whether we want to join in that initiative or not. So we have a little bit of time on it, but we can probably put that on an agenda.
All right, and so keep working with Mr. Leonardis on tracking that. Anything further on that, Mr. Leonardis?
Thank you. And yes, I did get the correspondence earlier today from resident Lon Allen, as well as he copied everybody on that. So we look forward to adding that to the future agenda. I'm not certain if it can make it on October 19th agenda, but probably the following agenda, early November. So thank you.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Great, sounds good. All right, well, if nothing further, thank you, everyone. I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting for tonight and see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.